This is Coach Drew Richards. He's the current men's basketball coach, head coach at UNC Pembroke. Before that, he was the associate head coach for about 5 years, where they had about a 73% win percentage in that time and made 4 NCAA tournament appearances in 5 years, won a ton of league titles and a bunch of great players. He also was the head coach at Lander University for a year before he came back to UNC Pembroke. But just in 1 year as a head coach, he just finished third nationally in rebound margin this past season, led the league, the Peach Belt Conference, in both points per game, rebound margin, and also offensive field goal percentage. When he was a head coach at Lander for a year ago, his only year there, went 23-8, won the league title, went to the NCAA tournament, set school records, was a top 25 team, and he's also coached at a few other colleges, coached a tour overseas, and he's also played professionally in Germany after playing at Missouri State. This is Coach Drew Richards, man. I think you're the perfect one to talk on this topic to get us warm up, so the floor is yours, my man.
Thanks for the introduction, Richie. I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate the talking about postseason evaluation. The number one evaluation is don't play basketball during COVID would be the number one thing. A lot of the points I'm going to bring up are stuff we've done in the past. This year for us was pretty rough. We had 13 games canceled, and I think we had 5 shutdowns because of COVID. We only ended up playing 6 games this year. So it was rough on our end, but going back to last year at Lander and what we've done previously and where I've coached as far as postseason evaluation, that's what I'm going to try to touch on a little bit. So the first topic we usually go over is the first thing we do is personnel evaluation. Obviously during the season, whether you're high school or college, you always collect thoughts on your players. I take notes, write down positives and negatives of each player during the season, things they're strong at, whether it was a bad day coaching them or consistently multiple days coaching them, or attitude, or, they were great, they played hard. I try to collect all these thoughts during the season to compile them down. I'm not one of those coaches that believe you should take 2 or 3 weeks off after the season ends to meet with your players. I think it's good to have some emotion in it, because if you wait 2 or 3 weeks, well, maybe it wasn't that bad, and maybe they were, maybe I was just overreacting. I think having emotion in it is good. I think that you waiting too long and then that emotion goes away, you become a nicer guy, you become less agitated, and then you wait, and the meeting isn't as probably honest as it needs to be, and then going into the next year, you're running into the same problems you did the year before. So I'm big on emotions. I try to meet with all of our players within a week of the season ending. And we'll sit down and we'll go over statistically what they did to see where they at, and it's not necessarily like, you didn't average 20 points per game. It's more, okay, whether it's a player that plays for us 10 minutes a game, these are what your statistics were, analyzing that. You did a great job in the minutes you were allotted. Here's your defensive rating on synergy. This is where you struggled. Going over as much as possible data. I know overloading these guys with data is not a great thing, but also whatever your meeting is about, they need to understand that you went in there to really, there's a reason why you're having this meeting and the things you're going to bring up. So, I go over stats. I go over defensive rating, offensive rating on synergy. We do a note card sold from Tom Izzo at the start of every season. We have 3 goals that they want to accomplish individually and goals they want to accomplish as a team. But secondly is the 3 things they want to accomplish as a player. And so we go over that. We meet about that about 3 times during the preseason and once during the year. So after that, after we talk about statistics and we go over those 3 goals, what do they achieve? And that could be anywhere from a higher free throw percentage to being a great teammate, whatever the case may be. We go over those 3 goals. Now, going back to the stats, the other part of that is if you have a guy that doesn't play in the games, we stat every single practice. So, we can even point to guys that didn't play a lot. Okay, well, in practice, you were one of our worst rebounders, and you had just as much opportunity to grab rebounds as this guy. So statistically, even in practice, you didn't do a great job, or you did a great job in rebounding. We need to find you more minutes. You can have that hard data if you do stat practice as well. So anyway, so back to the card. So we do those 3 goals, and then we go over those goals, and using that data, we talk, okay, you did a great job improving this. You didn't do a great job here. These are the areas you didn't improve. These are the areas you did improve. But at least, the player knows that you want them to achieve those goals, and you're monitoring that progress during the season if you have those goals listed on that card. So once again, going back to having hard data, showing them, okay, this is where you were, this is the strength, this is your negatives. And then, a big thing we try to do here is role definition. And we meet after preseason, when practice starts, after practice starts, when games start, talk about these are the role that we need you to be for our team to be successful. So that's the next thing we'd hit is, okay, did you fulfill your role on the team? Like, for example, we had a guy that came off our bench this year that was supposed to be a pass first, set the tone defensively, energy guy. And when he came off the bench this year, he jacked shots. Okay, you did not fulfill your role on the team. We both agreed to this was your role, and you did not succeed in that. So we're able to, once that role is defined, hold them accountable during the year with playing time, obviously, and then after the season, sit back down and go over, okay, this was your role. We both agreed to this role. And then obviously you weren't able to fulfill it, or you did fulfill it in that. And then the last thing, especially for college and things, is what is your future in this program? We've had, I'm a very honest person. It's probably to a fault with these guys, but as being a player and a coach, I feel like even if it's bad news, I'd rather be honest with bad news than lie to me with good. So I'm honest with these guys. Hey, this is what we see. We had a guy coming off our bench this year, same guy. I said, look, we don't see you playing in the future. We're recruiting 2-point guards. We'd love you to be the scout team member, but I just want to be honest with you. That way, you're not coming back and being ticked off because your role hasn't increased or decreased. And some of those talks are more pleasant, some of them aren't. But I think being honest, especially with your best players, and I think that's very important. So that's number one, personnel evaluation. Okay, that's the number one. That's the first step in our postseason evaluation. And I'll send this. I know some of you guys are typing, but I'll send this to Richie so he can send it out to you guys too. I have this written down. Number two is team evaluation. So after we get through going through personnel, the next part is team evaluation. So every team typically has statistical identities that they harp on the whole year. Ours is, we want a defensive field goal percentage of below 42%. We want a rebound margin of +8, and we want a 3-to-2 assist turnover ratio. That's our statistical. That's Braves basketball. That's our statistical identity. We try to pound that in these guys' brains all year, halftime, everything. So then we go through, okay, how did we do with our statistical identity? Did we get below 42 or below? Did we have +8, 3-to-2 assist turnover? Okay, so at least we can check off the boxes. We did not accomplish our goals, statistical goals this year. We did. And then in that identity, going back through, and the second part is offensively, what were our strengths? What did we do well? It goes back to that 3-to-2 assist turnover ratio. Notice I didn't say anything about offensive field goal percentage. I mean, once again, you got to kind of have your emphasis for your team, but ours, going back through and evaluating offensive strengths, weaknesses, how do we take care of the ball more? Was it schematics? Was it personnel? Offensively, what did we do well? What did we not? And then the next steps, defensively, what did we do well? What did we not? What did we get burned on more this year? Was it off the ball? Was it on the ball? 3 passes away? Was it our ball screen coverage? Right now, I'm having a midlife crisis on our ball screen coverage. If we should ice, if we should, drop coverage. So I do that about every year. So what were we at? What were our defensive strengths and weaknesses? And then what were we average at? What were we just okay at? Hopefully that's not, our statistical identity, but what were we just run of the mill at? I think that's important to know, because that either needs to be something that you get better at or you're willing to not improve at. But offensive strengths, weaknesses, defensive strength, weakness, what will we just average at? And then the last part of the team evaluation is going into postseason workouts. What area do we need to grow the most? Is it our ball handling? Is it our passing? I'm big on defensive breakdown stuff during the fall. In spring, I typically try to do more intense offensive work. So offensively, do our big go-to moves or counter moves or face-up, do they need to get better? Do our guards need to get better of planning on 2 feet, being strong with the basketball, passing off the bounce? So what area in that team evaluation, what area do we need to grow the most in the preseason? So that's the second part in the team evaluation. And then the final part that we go over is staff evaluation, our coaching staff ourselves. I try to be as honest with myself as possible. I try to be as honest with our staff as possible. So at the start of every year, I write out an entire sheet of paper that I hand to our staff that have staff responsibilities on it. It has my responsibilities, our associate head coach's responsibilities, our assistants, our GAs, down to our managers' responsibilities for the season. So after personnel evaluation, team evaluation, we'll get into staff evaluation. So the first thing to do is I'll sit down and, okay, did our associate head coach did he take care of his responsibilities this year? What did he do? What did he not do? did I take care of my responsibilities this year? What did I do? What did I not do? And be able to note that when I meet with the staff, I can say, okay, this is where you're lacking in your job performance. This is where you need to improve. This is where I'm lacking. I need to do a better job. Not freaking out every 5 seconds. Need to be a job, relax, delegating more. I mean, you really can. When you write that stuff down at the beginning of the season, it gives you a tool to be able to evaluate after the season, which I think is really important. So coaching staff assessment from me on down. Did we fulfill our responsibilities? Yes or no? Why? What can we do differently to improve that? One thing I love to do is I like to watch all our losses for self-coaching evaluation. We typically do film session after losses, but after that emotion has kind of fallen out of the game, being able to rewatch those, a month, 2 months later, and sit down from a strictly strategic standpoint and saying, okay, I did a great job of this. I did a poor job of this. Being able to write down and note exactly what areas of in-game management I myself have to do a better job of. Last year when I did that during quarantine, everyone was losing their mind. But one of the things I did was watch all of our losses from that year. One thing I learned is I got to stick to my guns, even in the depths of the game. If we tell guys they need to guard and rebound, if someone gets burned on a direct drive or someone doesn't crash, it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter if it's your best player or worst player. They need to come out of the game. There needs to be a consequence for it. And so that was kind of a self-evaluation I did last year, making sure we stick to our guns on our non-negotiables. So watch all losses for self-coach evaluation. The other thing I like to do in postseason for our program and staff evaluation is I like to watch game film on like programs, like system programs. We play with 2 forwards and 3 perimeters. So, we try to watch, like I watched Tennessee a bunch today on their defensive approach because they got some 2 athletic forwards and 3 guys. But I try to watch like system teams to try to pick stuff up. Me watching West Texas A&M last night had 4 guards and 1 big guy, and they all shot threes. That's not how we play. It's not going to really help me improve if I'm watching a team that does not do our style of play whatsoever. But watching Tennessee or another 2-forward system, I think helps you take concepts from their style of play and make yours better because it is at least close. Maybe not the same, but it's at least close. So game film on like system teams. And then after that, then start thinking of modifications for next season, using all that information from individual breakdown, from team breakdown, from personal breakdown, and then being able to add in modifiers to what you want to do next year, offensively, defensively. What can you modify with the personnel you have coming in, with the personnel you're losing, to be able to adjust and to put the best team on the floor as possible. So kind of a synopsis. So postseason evaluation, 1, we always go through personnel evaluation, collecting thoughts during the season, and then 2, team evaluation, and then 3, staff program evaluation. And that's kind of our steps. There's the basic steps to what our postseason evaluation process is.
Hey, Luke, greetings from Plainview High School. How are you, Coach Richards?
Good. How you doing?
Good. You was talking about rebounding earlier. I was wondering what kind of drills you could help me with there.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really like, as far as like boxing now, like a fundamental thing. I mean, obviously levels make a difference in things, but we try to emphasize, especially if it's a smaller. Yeah, we switch ball screens typically with our 4s and 5s, so our guards are trying to box out big guys fairly often. Depending on location of where they're at is what our kind of our teaching would be. So if they're near the basket and they're on a big, we essentially just tell them, if you need to face guard, like just basically don't let them get the ball. They're averaging more rebounds than you. If they can't get it, you can't get it kind of situation. So, we even say face. If you need to face guard them and take them out, whatever, just whatever you do not allow them to get the ball. You don't necessarily need to pursue it yourself, but don't let them get it. It's in kind of a mid-range area. We teach hit and go get, which is just stepping in, typically forearm or shoulder, taking a step towards the offensive rebounder, making contact, and then the next step is towards the basket. And then if they're on the perimeter, we call it check out. So we basically want every defender, if your man's on the perimeter, we call it check out, where you literally take a step towards them, you check them out to see if they're crashing or not. And if they're not crashing, then yourself will go crash, or if they are crashing, then you make contact. So, like I said, in the paint is more of a face guard. Just don't let them get it. Push them out of bounds. Push them under. I mean, we'd rather almost get a foul than an offensive rebound, give up an offensive rebound. And then mid-range area, hit and go get, using not necessarily a true box out. I think the game's kind of evolved with more athletic players where you can't just like turn your back to them, because then, offensively we're teaching them just to go get the ball. So, usually mid-range area, we say hit and go get, make contact with your shoulder or forearm, and the next step towards the basket, and then check out if they're on the perimeter. We have a couple rebounding drills that we do where our guards, bigs, whoever have to box out, have to make contact, whatever, at every single level. So we'll have a rotation where they box out someone on the block, when they box out someone at mid-range, and they box out someone at the three-point line as well. And every person has to get a rebound in each spot to move on to the next to get out of the drill, essentially.
What are some of the things you do as far as discipline-wise at your school? As far as like, okay, let's say player keep making turnovers in practice. Do you make them do push-ups, or do you make them run, or anything to that extent?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to what you emphasize. Our emphasis is defense and rebounding, especially in practice on the rebounding side. So we have kind of there's multiple ways we kind of go about holding them accountable for making sure that consistently defend and rebound. In practice, if they don't rebound, they sprint. It's not even like we're in 5-on-0 and we're doing a 5-on-0, and our theory with rebounding is you crash 3.5 to the glass and you get one back. You got to get the three that are crashing have to get 2 feet to the paint, and then the half spot has to get at least to the nail or the mid-range area. And then one guy has to get back. The back guy, the fullback, has to get all the way back to the half court, get to the Brave head for us, but the half court logo. And so during 5-on-0, whether it's, if we're doing half court 5-on-0, we're working on a primary, secondary break, anytime the ball goes up, those guys have to get to those positions. And if they don't, they get subbed out and they go sprint right next to the court automatically. Just a continual emphasis of, I don't care if it's shoot around. I don't care if it's an hour before the game. If we do something and you don't crash or do one of our non-negotiables, there's going to be a consequence for it. That's kind of in play. And then the way we chart practice, we have no box outs or no crashes. So anytime someone doesn't box out or anytime someone doesn't crash, we put a sprint down at the end of practice. And there's other things on this like bad closeout, assist turnover ratio, rebounding, deflections. So they get rewarded or penalized depending on how those stats come out at the end of every practice. And so during the practice, if they have a no box out or no crash, there'll be a marking on there, and they'll run for every single time they didn't crash or they didn't box out. And then the last way we hold them accountable is we have kind of a core value system, and each day we emphasize a core value in practice. So, for example, accountability is one of the core values. So we'll hold, defensively, if accountability is the core value, we might make someone the volume control guy in practice that day. So if the volume ever dips in practice as far as enthusiasm or communication, it's not the team running, it's the volume control guy that's getting on the side and running for his team, for him not holding his teammates accountable. And so we rotate those every single practice where integrity, enthusiasm, competitiveness, and so I keep looking up because it's right on. We make everybody sign it and we post it in their lockers or in their offices. But integrity, enthusiasm, competitiveness, selflessness, and accountability are the 5 core values. And then we allow our seniors to select a 6 core value or captains every single year. So this year's was persistence. Resiliency has been in the past. So anyways, we apply those every single day. So we try to utilize those with our non-negotiables. And accountability was one, like I said, if the volume ever dipped, then we have to run that guy. Or if they're not talking on defense at any point, if anybody's not talking on defense, we blow the whistle and the whole team runs. And that day in practice. Or if you have selflessness and, we're trying to improve our assist turnover ratio, whoever had a positive assist turnover ratio or a 2-to-1 assist turnover ratio that day in practice, they get out of any sprints at the end of practice, or they might get rewarded with a candy bar or a Gatorade or, any number of things. We try to mix. We even might get them a jacket or something. We try to mix up anytime they do what we ask in our core value system in practice. We try to give them a reward, whatever that reward may be. It depends on the day, but we like to keep them on their toes with that. So that's a long speech to talk about, but yeah, we try to every day we talk about our statistical identity, and then every day in practice we try to emphasize the assist turnover ratio, the rebounding, and the defense. Where I can live with a lot of things, but I can't live with those 3 things not being done by our team.
Coach, to piggyback on that rebounding aspect, do you designate players for the areas that they have to fill, and then does it determine, where the shot's being shot from, like a 3-point line or paint?
No, it doesn't. No, our 3, 4, and 5 get 2 feet to the paint every single possession, or they run, or they don't play. That's how we do things. Now the negotiation is between the 1 and the 2 typically are the ones that have to communicate, and one of them has to get back. And then what's so important about we call it the half spot. The fullback gets back to the logo. The half spot gets to the nail or mid-range area. What's so important about that spot is typically you want that to be your best on-ball defender, because their job, if they don't get a long rebound, is to jam the ball whenever it comes up the floor. And that helps we've been actually, for as much as we crash, I mean, our rule is like the best transition defense is an offensive rebound. But even outside of that, we actually have been really good defensive transition, because 1, we work on it all the dang time. And 2 is because we try to jam the ball in transition with that half spot. That way, any pass up the floor can be taken away by the full spot. Anybody trying to dribble up the floor can be jammed by the half spot. So like I said, the negotiations usually are between the 1 and the 2. And there's sometimes when we'll tell one of the guys, like, no, you are the half spot every single time. But we try to recruit guys like our 1 and 2 were 6'5" and 6'4" this year, and both of them average around 4 or 5 rebounds a game from the guard spots. So we want to recruit guards that rebound. So we usually have to communicate that to them, because there are times when we randomly will crash 5 guys, and if we don't get it, it's a lamp on the other end. So that communication between our guards is so vital. Between the half and the full spot. And it teaches your guys to talk. And then in practice, if they don't communicate it, both of them don't crash or both of them get back, then all of a sudden they're running and they're going to be held accountable for it.
By the way, when you said you have 3.5 rebounders, your half rebounder is maybe at the elbow?
It's at the nail, mid-range. That's the half spot. The 3.5, the half, and then there's the full back that gets all the way back. But the 3, the 4, and the 5 are how we evaluate is just 2 feet to the paint. Once they get 2 feet to the paint, then they're considered crashed.
Do you only transition back to man, or do you ever transition back to like playing zone defense?
Yeah, we transition to zone. We mix up defenses. We did a little more this year with one of our best players' moms passed away, and he didn't play a couple games, so we weren't as talented. So we had to try to mix up defense a little bit more. But yeah, we transition to man or zone. Even if it's a 2-3. With one guard getting back, I mean, we still communicate that in transition typically, or have a call. We usually don't press on a live ball. Our defensive philosophy is picking up 94 feet man to man anyway, so it kind of fits in with our philosophy defensively to jam the ball and to turn them before they get to half court. But we do mix up defenses, zone and man whenever we're transitioning back. If you jam the ball, it prevents the ball from coming up the floor. And if you have your full spots jobs to take away passes that are up the floor, especially ball side. So if you take away ball side passes up the floor, and you take away the ball from if you slow down the ball in transition, typically that gives your guys time to get back. And if they can't get back, then you got to find faster guys. I mean, because they know that they're not going to play if they don't rebound, and if they don't get back in transition defense, they know they're not going to play. But usually we transition into zone. We'll sometimes do make or miss too, just to mess with offenses. Like if we make a bucket, we'll get back in a 2-3. If we miss it, we're automatic man. And then I know a coach that does the opposite. If they miss, they're in zone. If they make, they're a man. Just to mix up. The best type of transition defense sometimes is getting the offense confused at what they're doing. And that'll do that sometimes. Just if you just make it a basic, you make it where a man missing zone. That way your guys know, and then mixes up like I said, it screws up the offense because they don't know what you're in half the time when they're transitioning.
Yeah, I just want to clarify a couple things. I know some of us, I understand kind of the basics of what you're talking about, but some of us may not understand the half and full spot and who's crashing, when's crashing. So I just want to clarify that for some of the coaches regarding that, if you could.
So like I said, with the 3.5 crash, so 4, 5, 3, right here. If that makes sense. So we crash 3.5. So the 3 or the 4, the 5, and the 3 are getting in the paint right here. 2 feet in the paint is what we evaluate as a crash. That's the 2. It looks like a 5 of this, but the half spot is 1 or the 2. They get to the mid-range, the mid-post, the nail, whatever your vocabulary is. They have to get at least to the 15-foot line. That way, if there's any long rebounds, they can hunt them down. And then the other guy, the fullback, if you will, fullback has to get fullback in transition, halfback right here. And then, of course, if we don't get the rebound and there's an outlet over here, the halfback's job is to jam the basketball. The fullback's job is to take away any pass up the floor on ball side.
How much time you dedicate to that, Coach, every day?
You know what? It's the more questions I get about rebounding, the question is like, what drills do you do? We don't do a lot of rebounding drills. We really don't. It's more of an emphasis. It's kind of like I said, our identity. So, every day is devoted to rebounding because our players know if they don't do it, there's going to be consequences with playing time or conditioning or whatever the case may be. So, we'll do some rebounding drills. We'll do, some basic stuff that just as a toughness and that kind of competitive standpoint. But as far as just, they understand that this is what one of our non-negotiables is. And every single day in practice, we pound it in their brain that this is something we're going to do. And if you don't want to do it, then we're not the place for you to play basketball.